Okay, so what is a square root? Does anybody remember?
When we multiply something by itself.
It is something that's squared when we take and figure out one of them. So let's just talk about squaring first. So if I have 2 squared, that's 2 times 2, which is 4. If I have 25 squared, does anybody know what that is? That's 25 times 25. 625. If you plan on doing anything major with math, I recommend being familiar, or at least being able to recognize the first 25 squares. It helps make a lot of the things as you go up into the more advanced maths a lot easier. If that's not something you're going into, you will have access to a calculator in this class. I'm not taking them away. But just realize that's something that makes your life easier. If you're good at memorizing, might not hurt you to try to memorize the first 25 squares. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared 2, 3 squared 9, so forth through the first 25. Because as you get into the more advanced maths, sometimes recognizing that pattern is going to make doing some of the steps easier than having to troubleshoot it on your calculator. Okay, so our goal is to take the square root. Whereas, like here, if I did the square root of 625, that is 25. But if I type in my calculator, square root of 28, does it come up with a nice, pretty, whole number? No. It comes up with an irrational number. And so we need to figure out its components. There are components in it that could be where I could take the square root of it. And you can simplify square roots by taking anything that can have a square root inside it out. And we're going to do something called, I do upside down division. You can do regular factor tree. But I do what it looks like an upside down division bar. I'm going to put the 28 inside. And then I start with my low prime numbers. So, first prime number I have is 2. Will 2 divide into 28? Okay, when I divide 28 by 2, what number do I come up with? 14. Then I do it again. What low prime number, so will 2 go into 14? Okay, leave me with 7. And so here, I've gone down, it's 7 prime. There's nothing else that can go into it, so it is prime. When I am finding the square root, I'm looking for sets of 2 in my factors. So there's a set of 2 2's. So I'm going to write that down in front. And then I will multiply any other factors left and put it under the square root. In this case, it's just 7. So this is my simplified answer. You can use a factor tree to do the same thing that upside down division does. It just tends to expand and get bigger. But some people would rather do a factor tree because you can factor out multiple things from different branches. So that's just up to your personality type as what you find easiest. So let's look at square root of 80. I want you all to do your upside down factor tree. Check to see if you match what I have. Okay. What do I have in sets of 2? Well, I have a set of 2 2's and another set of 2 2's. So those come out of the radical. 2 times 2 is 1 for each of the sets. What stays under the radical, which is what the square root sign is called, is a radical, is 5. So now I can multiply my 2 times 2, and I come up with 4 square roots of 5. For today's purposes, I am not getting into variables underneath the square root, but they would work the same, because we are going towards learning how to use a quadratic formula. And so for the quadratic formula, just knowing how to factor out your Numbers is all you need to know for right now. We will deal with other things as we go throughout the year. So this is something we'll revisit later on this year. So under this time, what's different? There's a negative number in front, and it happens to be negative. Can you have a negative number times a square root? Is that going to cause problems?
No.
Can you have a negative number under a square root? No. Not without having to deal with other things that we have not learned yet. And so let's look at the square root of 320. So go ahead and do your upside down division for 320. Okay, back to see if you have what I have. So let's look for our sets. We have one set of 2's, 2 sets of 2's, 3 sets of 2's. So now we are going to write down what we had originally times each of those sets. So we have one set of 2's, 2 sets of 2's, 3 sets of 2's. And then do our radical with what was left, which was a 5. So we're going to end up multiplying negative 3 times 2 times 2 times 2, which comes up with what?
Negative 24.
Negative 24 times the square root of 5. One last one, and then I'll let you work on your assignment. And this last one, we have a negative 10 times the square root of 54. So go ahead and do your upside down division for 54. Check to see if you match. So this time, we have a set of what? And so we have a negative 10 times my set of 3's. But what's left behind is this 2 and 3. So 2 times 3 is going to be left under my radical. And so we have negative 10 times 3, which is negative 30, and the square root of 6. The number under your square root does not have to be prime, but the factors of what that is have to be prime. And so remember, prime numbers are numbers where nothing besides 1 in itself will divide into.